Hey, it's Zim, and today we're looking at Islanders. Now, originally I had a different video planned, but I ended up picking up Islanders, and then it kind of felt like I've already played this game. And I quickly realized this feels very similar to DorfRomatik, the video I just did. Now, there are different things going on in this game, but it was so close to the game, I had to check to see if it was made by the same developers, because in a way it felt like it was. However, it's not made by the same developers, and it is a different game in its own similar genre to DorfRomatik. Now, Islanders is officially out. It's not in early access like DorfRomatik is, and it's also cheaper at about $4.99 on Steam. Now, it's a game I've played for a little while now and enjoyed it fairly well. I think I actually prefer DorfRomatik compared to Islanders, but we're going to jump into a game. I'm going to reset my progress here, and I'll show you what it's about. And as you can see, there's a high score, just very similar to DorfRomatik, but there's also an online ranking, and obviously I'm not very high up there. But we'll go ahead. There's a sandbox mode or high score mode. We'll do high score. This game will always give you a ton of achievements. That's what I've noticed. I've unlocked like 10 or 12 of them. So this is what you're presented with, and you are available to kind of pan around, rotate the camera as you need it. You can control that both through keyboard and mouse. And the whole point of this game is you're going to choose one of two options. These options will always kind of change up, and you'll unlock more as the game proceeds. And then you are going to, we'll say, take the lumber mill, place them on the island. Now, every time you place something, your score goes up. So if we place this lumberjack, if we hover over it, we see it gets bonuses for sawmill, statues, and trees nearby, but is penalized for having too many lumberjacks close in range. So what we're going to want to do is put lumberjacks that can share the same amount of trees, but not overlap inside their range. So we'll place that there. And as you can see, my score went up 8 points. So I can't do that because it'll give me -6, and I don't want that, right? So we will do something like this. And then again, my score went up, and then we have a sawmill to place. And I get bonus points for having lumberjacks inside the sawmill range. You can, of course, rotate these buildings. Now, that will become more important when you start building city stuff. But for these free ranges, it's kind of less important. And then, once this circle fills up, we unlock a new building to choose. So we can do either a farm pack or a brewing pack. Let's do a farm pack. You'll also notice on the right that the island is starting to color itself in. Once this is filled, we can move on to a new island. Now, you can keep playing on this island until essentially you can't raise the score any higher and then move on. And that's probably the best way to do it. Or you can, if you're just kind of playing around with the different options and things, you can just jump to new islands. Now, what does that mean? It's going to basically give you new variants, oftentimes bigger and sometimes more complex or harder, although I've seen like a really hard island for me on like the very second one, and then I've played 8 islands in a row of never even seeing that much of a difficult one. So where this difference from DorfRomatik, obviously you're placing tiles and building a world, and in this case you're just placing things on a world already built for you. It definitely has more of a Tetris feel than Lumberjack is not going to be good. Put it there. So that is where the elements of this game is coming in, is that you are trying to kind of puzzle out how you can place things in the best procedure to get the most points so you can keep going. Now, if you run out of buildings and you haven't leveled up to unlock a new one, that's when the game is over. That's your high score, you're done. Of course, up until that point, if I didn't like that position, I could hit undo, and it gives me my building back. But obviously that was still the best placement. We're going to place a mill here. And so statues over here, there's usually 1 or 2 on each island until you get later on, and then you can actually start placing them yourself, which is cool. We'll give a bonus. So obviously I want this obelisk in by my mill, and then we have some fields, it looks like. So we'll place some fields nearby. Now, I can still keep placing, as you can see, even if I have a piece available. And eventually you'll get to the point where you can keep placing everything that you have and have like 2 or 3 of these queued up, and that's good because it means that it gives you more flexibility, or you'll fill the bar up and still have buildings to place, and so you might hold off on those buildings because you want to see what options you have available. So it gives you some very interesting things that you can do in terms of like strategy and placement. Here's that city pack I was talking about. This is where Tetris is going to matter the most, really, because as you can see, these buildings want to be near the city center. You don't want Shaman Resort or another city center. We don't have that problem. But mansions and houses also want to be kind of next to the city center. And we actually want to... Well, we're not going to be able to get in the obelisk range without hurting myself too much, so we won't bother. You'll notice there's also like rocks and stuff on the like actual land itself. If you have a building that's going to be placed there, it'll just override the rocks, so it's just kind of a purely decorative, unlike the major landscape shifts where like they have inclines and stuff like that. But so mansions have small bubbles and they want to be next to the city center, so this is where that Tetris is going to kind of come and play, and where you're going to really pay attention to which way a building's facing and which way a building's shaped. Houses have a bigger bubble, so they can actually place further away, and they actually get bonuses for being next to other houses, so you might want to kind of do that, give the mansions a closer range, and then put the houses next to each other. It can definitely, because of like you're trying to squeeze everything in, can definitely feel finicky. Like you're, oh no, I just want this to be as close as possible and line up correctly because I'm a little bit OCD about it, and then it's definitely a finicky game when you're trying to put pieces together, because it'll try to snap pieces like close to each other, but then other times it will like just allow you to push through pieces, which can be frustrating. But this is the entire game. It's a good game. Like I said, I think I'm more of a fan of DorfRomatik. I like the tile placement better. I like the fact that you're creating and impacting the world more, although I think this game probably has a maybe an easier approach to things. It was definitely easier to kind of pick up and be like, oh, this is how I'm going to get the most points here, and oh, this is what I'm trying to strive for. Although it definitely has some blind bids. Like one of the nice things about DorfRomatik is you're gonna see which tiles are upcoming. Until you get the next point system, I have no clue what other buildings I'm gonna get, so I might not see the city center. And some buildings also like lead to other buildings, so you might end up, like, if you don't choose a certain structure, not being able to get another structure that you want to get later on until you build that other structure. And like that's all like kind of a learning process that like you may not realize. Just put that there. Like I wish there was something that told me like, oh, this is coming up, so be careful, or oh, like these are my next 2 choices, I should do this or that, right? And as we can see, we've completed the island, but if we wanted to, we could keep playing. I could keep choosing buildings from here, and I could keep placing until this was basically impossible to continue, and then move on. That's going to give you the best score, which is what this game is about. It's continuing to build islands and get better scores. However, we're just going to move to the next island because I want to show you what that's look like. It'll warn you, hey, you'll have to restart, and that's true. So when you go to the next island, you're going to start over again, but your points don't reset. So as we can see, we're presented with this. It's pretty interesting. This is gold. That's a resource that you'll be like, oh, I can't wait to build a building for, and then probably won't be able to build a building for it until like island 5 or higher. Like you just, your score will fill up the island too much that unless you're really crunching numbers for a high score, and even then, I don't think you'll see the building for the gold mine. But let's see what we're starting out with. Farmer pack or seaweed pack. Let's do a seaweed pack. So we'll build on our coast here. And of course, we might want to rotate it towards the ocean. Why would we want to do that? Well, because the seaweed farms have to go in the ocean. Yeah, the art is pretty simple, but I like the art style itself. It's definitely an engaging game, just like I found DorfRomatik to be. I think DorfRomatik also just... I don't know. It's like easier to just start up a game and play. I feel like with the island crunching, like it's easy to just keep pushing more and more islands and not ever reach an end point. And I don't know if I necessarily enjoy that, although that's the entire point of this game, right? I think DorfRomatik, like, you end up running out of tiles, so like there's always like a time pressure system that this game just lacks. Brick industry, why not? Like I said, it would be nice if I knew what buildings were coming up, or if there was a way to like control that in some way. But once again, this is kind of the finicky thing. It's like, how close can I put to the beach? And for like, it's too far because I want to place another one, but I obviously don't want to overlap anything. And I understand why it's kind of the point of the game. Once again, it's very Tetris-y, but like the finicky nature of it does get frustrating at certain points where you're like, or you might accidentally place something, and luckily there's an undo button, right? So it's not like it's the end of the world, but you might place something and then be like, oh man, that was not the spot because it just moved slightly where I was about to place it. But overall, Islanders is a solid game, and like I said, it's not in early access, and I know a lot of people who don't like to buy into early access games because of the risk, and while I feel like DorfRomatik is a very full and complete game for what it is and is easily worth buying into, this game is completely out and is about half the price at $4.99. I think it's definitely worth checking out if you thought DorfRomatik looked interesting, or if you like these kind of puzzle games where you're just trying to get the highest score by the most optimized plays and Tetris style gameplay with putting down the buildings to maximize your score. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. That's all for me today, and I will see you next time.